Namaste and good afternoon to everyone. And I welcome you to this very interesting, insightful session where I will be first interacting with Ashdin about his work and his very inspiring book. And then towards the end, as we create some time, maybe to talk about my work. So, uh, Ashdin, this is not every day that one comes across a book on habit. And it is not every day that one comes across a person who calls himself a habit coach and whose work is creating ripples in the everyday life of people, whether in personal life context or in work context. So first of all, help us understand what was your motivation to become a habit coach and what was your motivation to write this very interesting book called Small Actions, Big Results.
Lovely. All right. So my name is Ashdin Doctor, and I'm a habit coach. Have you all heard of a habit coach before? No? Anyone heard of habit coach? People keep asking me, Ashdin, this habit coach. I know life coach. I know physical coach. Hey, life coach, what is this? So I tell the people that as a life coach, I have only one role: to make your life easy and to get rid of frustrations. Do we all have frustrations? Yeah? We all have different frustrations in life. No, some of us wanted to lose weight. Some of us, what's up with the? uh, some of us wanted to lose weight, start exercising, do all these things, and did they happen? No chance. How many of us have tried to start a diet at some point of time? Put your hands up. So many hands going up. All of us have started to try a diet, and then how long did that last? We started, and then after exactly 1 day, one day, and then the whole diet goes for a toss. So I realized that people are not making the changes. Like, listen, guys, the mic is cutting in and out. Can you just do something about the mic, please? Is this better? All right. Hopefully. Thank you. So as a result, I said that we need to figure out how do we get rid of these frustrations, because all of us have these frustrations in life. And I went through my own personal journey. When I was in my early 30s, I was working hard, overstressed. I come from a family business background, so everyone was comparing me constantly to everyone else. I had to be the best at whatever happened. I'd started my own division within the company. At that time, I was in an abusive relationship. We were fighting every night from 9 till 4 in the morning. It was just, all of us have these kinds of moments in our life. And one fine day, I was getting ready. Also, at that point of time, I'm talking about more than 10 years ago, the idea of health didn't exist. So if I was having butter chicken and jeera rice, I thought I was eating well. And I was also become nice and tubby. I was 15 kilos overweight, no, 19 kilos overweight. I couldn't climb up a flight of stairs. So my house was on the 3rd floor, and if I started climbing up, I would start panting by the 1st floor. I would take a break, and then climb the 2nd floor, take a break, climb the 3rd floor. That was the kind of life that I had. And we had to make a presentation. And you know how we all work on presentations, right? Procrastination, all of us are master procrastinators. Do you all procrastinate? I can see so many heads nodding. Hands up in the air. So procrastination, finally, on last 2 nights, I did not sleep. I finished down the entire presentation. Next morning, I'm getting ready. I've gone for my bath. I put on my shirt, and I start sweating profusely. My entire shirt is drenched. And I can feel my heart going tuck, 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 tuck. And I collapse on the floor. Now, all of this has happened when I'm 30, 31. I'm collapsing on the floor. And there are these 2 voices in my mind. One voice is saying, oh my God, Ashdin, you're going to die right now. And there's another voice in my head that is saying, congratulations, Ashdin, you work so hard, you're going to die. We all have this within us that pushes us to that extreme. And that is what I was going through. After that moment, I realized that something had to change. I cannot continue living like this. So I decided that I have to, change my life completely. So what I did was I did what everyone does. I went and bought all those programs for exercise which are 1 hour long. Insanity workout, P90X. I gave myself a hard goal. I wanted a 6-pack. I was nice and tubby, right? So I wanted a six-pack. So I tried the exercise. Now I couldn't go beyond 5 minutes of that exercise. And how am I supposed to finish 1 hour? So I threw it away. I said, this is rubbish. Then I discovered this exercise program called a Tabata workout, which is a 4-minute exercise. 4 minute everyone can do. And that's what I started doing. 4 minutes became 8 minutes, 8 minutes became 10 minutes, 10 minutes became half an hour. And soon I was able to do the 1 hour workouts. And I realized that this is the way to grow and change. Then I said, okay, now I've read that to get six packs, you have to focus on food. So I went on every diet known to mankind. Low carb, high fat, low carb, everything. I mixed everything up together. Didn't work. Discovered something called intermittent fasting. Much easier. Don't eat. So simple. So I said, chalo, I'll do this. 16 hours a day, don't eat. Fantastic. Within 1 year, my body had changed, my life had changed, my face had changed. I would go to weddings and parties and I would meet people and they would say, Arey Ashdin, you're looking so different. What happened? Tell us. I also want to lose 5 kilos. And apparently everyone wants to lose only 5 kilos. It's so easy. I want to lose 5 kilos. By when you want to lose 5 kilos? In 2 weeks when my wedding is there. Fantastic. Impossible. So I would start telling them, I did this, then I did this. I would do this. And they would all listen to me for 20 seconds. And they would say, Baba, I do not have your motivation. I do not have your self-discipline. Don't we think like this? I wish I could do this. But we don't. And as a result, I realized that if people don't think that they have the motivation, if they don't think that they have the self-discipline, they will never start doing it. And if they never start, how are they ever going to do it? So in fact, the most important word on my book is the second word, action. We keep thinking about it, but we don't take action. And the whole idea of habit coaching was how do we turn simple things or actions or changes into simple actions people can make. So I started habit coaching. I thought it would be like a small little side business. We turned up with the Habit Coach podcast. It became one of the best podcasts in the world on self-help. And people loved it because every habit was only a 5-minute thing that you could do immediately. So the idea, and a long answer for your thing, because now we have 1 hour as a session. So the idea is that habits are the cornerstone of everything we do. In fact, the way that I like to define habits, and I'll end with how I define habits, is any thought or action, conscious or subconscious, repeated at a set frequency. We normally think all habits are subconscious, right? I don't know how I tied my shoelaces, I don't know how I brush my teeth, but it happens. Subconscious. But you cannot subconsciously go to the gym. If you went to the gym subconsciously, you will drop the weight on your head. So you can't subconsciously go to the gym. Instead, what you do is you realize that some habits are conscious habits. And not all habits are actions, like tying your shoelaces or brushing your teeth. Some habits are thought habits. Imagine you wake up every morning, and what do? You snooze the alarm, and then you say, oh my God, my life sucks. And the next morning you wake up and say, oh my God, my life sucks. Next morning you wake up and say, my life sucks. What is going to happen to your life? It's going to suck. And that's what we don't realize, that our thoughts are our habits as well. So a large part of what we do is understanding the thoughts that need to change in order for our life to change.
So long is not long as it has meaning and substance. And that's what you offer to us through your lived story. So small actions and big results is not just the premise, it seems, of your work and of your book, but it is perhaps the essence story of your own lived story. Essence of your own lived story.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious to understand that habits, as perhaps a depth psychologist like me would understand, are things that we acquire as early life imprints. They sometimes come to us as genetic influence. Sometimes, more often than not, they come through us through upbringing, through what we inculcate from our environment, what is put into us, installed into us by our environment, by our parenting. How easy or difficult is it to unlearn what is early life imprint and learn anew what you call conscious habit?
Lovely. So, in fact, my first TEDx talk was on this. It was on understanding that from our parents, we don't just inherit their genes, but we inherit their habits. And that is the key. Most of us are wondering, how are our lives like this? Is this the life that I want? How did this happen? And this is because most of us picked up our parents' habits, our friends' habits, and we did not choose them. We took them up subconsciously. All I'm saying as a habit coach is we need to understand where we are, what are the subconscious habits we picked up. Subconscious thing, money doesn't grow on trees. Oh, you are like this, you are a loner, you are like that. The number of things people keep telling us subconsciously plays in our mind, and that becomes our identity. So what we have to do is we have to realize that these are the habits that are dragging us down. What are the ones that we are willing to change? How are we willing to change them? And only once you realize that you're doing a habit. There's a lovely statement that says that obesity doesn't run in your family. We normally blame our genes for obesity, etc. It says obesity doesn't run in your family. The fact is that nobody runs in your family, which is why you are fat. And that is true, because what happens is that you see so many people. I remember this so vividly, on how habits affect our life. When I was growing up, we didn't have a TV at home. So the entire living room was focused around talking to each other. So our sofa sets were facing another sofa set. As soon as the TV came in our house, all our homes face where the TV. Have you noticed this? Even in your house, you'll notice the sofa is facing a TV. That means what? The entire purpose of the house is to sit and watch TV? And then we wonder why we're not moving so much. So we realize that the environment that we've created also forms these habits, and all of this is happening subconsciously in our life. So if we want to make a change, if we want our life to transform and become better, improve, this is something that we need to start doing.
So I'm very happy to suddenly realize I was in my mind recalling how's our sofa formation. And I'm very happy to see that we have only 2 seats facing the TV. The rest are in a different formation. Thank you so much. So in your book, you lay a great emphasis on goal setting. And what I liked was that you say that it is the long-term perspective which should guide the short-term goal. At the same time, another concept which I read in your book was about micro goals. So help us, understand this whole approach that you take, synthesizing long-term perspective with short-term goal setting and keeping your action focused on micro goals.
Lovely. I think goals are one of the most important things that we need to do for our lives. Very often, we look back at our life. You've heard this concept called middle-age crisis, mid-age crisis. What happens? Middle-age crisis is this. You've lived your life, basis everybody else's idea of what you should be doing. And suddenly you one day wake up and say, but this is not the life I want. And then you have a midlife crisis. That is what technically a midlife crisis was. The problem is that we don't have a goal. We don't know where we are heading in life. Imagine if you are steering a ship and you don't know where you want that ship to go. What is going to happen to that ship? It's going to keep going here and there, here and there, here and there. And you'll notice most of our lives are exactly like that because we don't have a goal that we want to achieve. I think in my first book, Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, I give a story of my friend who's a mountaineer. So he climbs to Everest and all these crazy high mountains. And we had gone to Everest Base Camp together and we were talking and he was telling me, Ashdin, do you realize that for us, the goal is not to climb Mount Everest? I was like, huh? I thought the goal was to climb Mount Everest. He said, no, the goal is not to climb Mount Everest. The goal is to climb up and come back home safely. That is the goal. So you understand, if you set the wrong goal, what's going to happen? You're going to land up on Everest, but you're not going to be able to come back down. So the idea of goal setting is so critical. Do you know where you want to go in the end so that you don't suddenly end up somewhere you don't want to be? If you've only got enough oxygen tanks to go up but not come back down, you're not going to be able to make it. So the whole idea is when you're setting your goal, identify where the end goal is. Now, once you set your end goal, don't keep looking at it. That is what we were talking about. Once you set your goal, you know the direction. Now what you have to do is set immediate small goals. What are your 1 week goals? What are your 1 day goals? I was with my business, one of my businesses, and I was with their sales team. And I said, listen, guys, we only have 3 months to get this done. And they said, yeah, 3 months, lots of time, don't worry. And I realized these people are not taking it seriously. So I said, do you realize that 3 months is only 90 days? Out of those 90 days, 20 days are over. We only have 70 days. Suddenly, everyone woke up because they suddenly realized those small steps that were needed were disappearing in front of them. What happens to us is when we set a long-term goal, we don't realize the number of steps that are there. And we think, I'll do it in the future. What we have to do is learn to set what are the goals that you have for today, for tomorrow, and the next week. I think setting these micro goals makes a big difference. In fact,
I like to think that perhaps micro goals is what keeps us closer to the keyword of your title, which is actions.
yes, the micro goals keeps us active. So one of the things people ask me is, Ashdin, you've written 4 books in 2 years. How did you manage to write 4 books in 2 years? Because most of us want to write a book and we take our entire lifetime to write a book and we never end up writing. How many of you all want to write a book? It's quite interesting. Have you all started writing it or have you started thinking it? See, thinking it. See, what happens is most of us have this bestseller in our mind and we never actually take action on it. And I realized this was what I was doing as well. I had this bestseller book idea in my mind and I said, I will write. 2 years went, I didn't write. Then I saw a video where one of the best authors in the world was saying something interesting. He said, all you have to do is write 700 words every day. Without fail, write 700 words every day and don't look at what you've written. If you look at what you've written, you're going to go into editing mode, and in editing mode, you think differently. So he said, just write 700 words every day. So I said, this I can do. 700 words, 700 words, 700 words, 700 words. So that massive goal of how many pages is this book? Some 500 odd pages. 500 odd pages came down to 700 words every day. That long-term goal became a short-term goal that you could easily achieve. And that is the key. Whatever you want to do, don't think that final. Don't think the big thing. Think the smallest possible action that you can take today.
This was really loving. And as you were explaining, I was asking myself, okay, 73,000 words book, what behavioral habit did I adopt? And I realized that, yes, I'm not a person very high on self-discipline, but I think when it came to the discipline of writing, I somehow learned to coach my heart and my mind to collaborate. My heart would want to flow free and my mind wanted a certain structure. And I just kind of, did some bit of coaching for myself. This is my last book. But before that was, of course, a book that took a different timeline. Now, coming back to goal setting, to your book, because right now we are talking about your book. And once again, I would like to hold it up and say that the emphasis, please remember, is on actions and results. But when you say actions, the other word also stands out. Why do you want people to notice the word small? What is the role and the importance of keeping the action small?
Lovely question. People keep coming up to me at parties and saying, you're a habit coach, right? This is the habit that I want to create today. And what is the habit? I will do yoga for 2 hours every morning. I will first start with 1 hour of pranayam, then I will do 1 hour of yoga, and then I will do 30 minutes of meditation. And I look at them and I said, very good. Do you do any of this right now? No. But from tomorrow onwards, I will start doing it. And I say, best of luck, you're not going to do any of this. I remember I had a friend who one day woke up and said, Ashdin, from tomorrow, I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning and I'm going to run 5 kilometers. This was her New Year resolution. Okay, I said, Sabash. This girl has never woken up at 5 a.m. She's never run 5 kilometers in her life. Suddenly tomorrow she's going to do both of these things. Now ask yourself, don't we set goals like this? Right? We always set these impossible tasks. Why? We set impossible tasks because we find it cool to tell others. We want that sabashi. We want that compliment from others saying, wow, you're doing this. Wow. But that is not the way to actually make change in your life. If you want to make change in your life, you have to make it small. So what I tell people is that your yoga habit does not start by doing 1 hour of yoga. It does not start by doing half an hour of yoga. It does not start by doing 15 minutes of yoga. It starts by rolling out your yoga mat and sitting on it. Bas. That is it. That is your entire yoga habit. Because now that you sat down on your yoga mat, you'll do one stretch like this. You will do one this. Maybe you'll do 5 Surya Namaskars. But if you had only 5 minutes to do yoga and you said, "Arey, 1 hour class, I can't do," and run away, what's going to happen? You're going to miss out that habit. So your habit is very simple. Anyone here wants to start yoga? Anyone wants to do yoga? Nobody wants to do yoga. Khalas. Couple. So now you know where you start. Just roll out that yoga mat. So in the first book, I talk about 3 golden rules of habit change. The first golden rule is called make it stupidly small. So small that you feel stupid not doing it. Arey, I couldn't even roll out the yoga mat and sit on it. How stupid. Right? So that is the idea of stupidly small. The second one, the second golden rule of habit change is make it extremely easy. Make it extremely easy. That means don't add friction. Every time you realize that you're making an excuse for something, it is not easy. Imagine if that yoga mat was on top of a cupboard. Every time I had to take the stool, stand on the stool, take out the yoga mat, and then roll it down. Not going to happen. Made it difficult. So we have to make it easy for ourselves to do. If you want to stop smoking, don't have cigarettes at home. Don't have lighters at home. Don't have ashtrays at home. So you make it super easy. You make it extremely easy to do. And the third golden rule of habit change we can talk about later on. So the whole idea is this. Like you rightly said, don't think about the big action you're going to take. Think about the small action you're going to take. And then start growing with it. As your yoga practice becomes more and more bigger, better, you become stronger, that habit automatically go to become a 1 hour practice.
In fact, in this context, the metaphor that you have used in your book is so interesting. I found it very, very insightful. You've used the metaphor of water, that water takes the course which is of least resistance.
Correct.
That it doesn't really fight with the obstacles on the way, but it finds its own, least resistance path. Say a bit about that before you'd like to first talk about my book or open up the floor for questions?
I'll talk about this, then we'll do your book.
Yeah.
I love it. We have lots of time. We have our timers here. So this is the time. Okay. So in the book, we give the example of the Grand Canyon. Have you all heard of the Grand Canyon? Right? It's this huge, monstrous canyon. You can't even imagine how huge it is. And all of this entire beautiful structure was created by one river, the Colorado, flowing through it. And over years, it was flat land, slowly, it created this canyon. And water is beautiful. It has so many different ways you can think about it. Obviously, Bruce Lee talks about be like water, etc. But the aspect of what I'm talking about is just how persistent it is. You try blocking it, it'll go from here. You try doing something, it'll go from here. And it will just form its own path. Our habits need to be like that, need to be like water. And slowly, even mountains will move aside for that habit. Something that you thought impossible will move aside because of the way that that little river, that little water moves through it. And think about something small that you want to do. Over 5 years, over 10 years, think about the compounding effect of that. Some of you might want to save money, start investing. 10% of your salary every month that you put aside in an investment, can you imagine just how big it's going to be after 50 years? It's going to be monstrous. That's an idea of how something small, just like water, can grow, and turn a mountain and make a small valley through it.
That's actually a very interesting and very inspiring idea. And for those of you who think that going to the US is not kind of doable, but you still want to see a Grand Canyon, we have a mini but very powerful version in India in the state of Andhra Pradesh, in a place called Gandikota, where Krishna River has created a similar canyon. Of course, it's much smaller in size, but equally intriguing. So, this path of least resistance, some of us may look down upon it from the ego mind point of view. Because as you said, we all want to give ourselves a big pat that I've done the big momentous thing. And in that context, tell us something about the tiny habit thing that you are talking of.
So, like I said, everything starts off by what is the smallest possible action you can take for something. Like I was saying, for the writing the book, what is the smallest possible action? 700 words. The idea is that you grow with it. Let me take this and turn it on its head. Normally, people ask me, Ashdin, how long does it take to form a habit? And I was like, why do you want to know? And they say, I've heard it's 20 days, 21 days, 75 days, and you get all these strange numbers. And as a habit coach, I've never seen any habit happen in 21 days. Okay? What happens is that as soon as you think you form the habit, which is 21 days I did this, now habit has formed, on the 22nd day you will drop it. It will go away from you. So what I normally tell people is don't think about your habit for 21 days. Think about your habit for the rest of your life. You want a habit for the rest of your life. Otherwise, what is the point of it? So think about the habit for the rest of your life. And you can do only something small for the rest of your life. Many people say, and all these coaches you'll hear saying, break out of your comfort zone. Have you heard of that? Break out of your comfort zone. Tod do, ford do, get out of it. This is very hard. And imagine breaking out of your comfort zone every single day. It's a tiring life. We want to make our life easy and free of frustrations. So you do something simple, something small, easy, but you know where your goal is and you know where you're heading. Do you want me to read out the chapter that you were talking about? Lovely. So there's a beautiful chapter on goal setting. It's called Lakshya and Lakshmi. Let me open that.
This is the book, and the chapter is called Lakshya.
Lakshya and Lakshmi. This is an interesting podcast that I've done with. So I said that we have the Habit Coach podcast, and I was talking to, I think, Devdat Patnaik, and he had explained this to me. It goes like this. Among the gods and goddesses that Hindus pray to is goddess Lakshmi. While we think of her as the goddess of wealth, and the Hindus especially pray to her on the day of Diwali, here's a fun fact. The name Lakshmi was most likely derived from the word lux, which means to perceive or observe. This, of course, is the word that transforms into Lakshya. In Hindi, the word for aim or goal. So Goddess Lakshmi brings you not money, but your lakshyas or your goals. I realized this connection when I was attending a puja for Ma Lakshmi. During the puja, everyone was focusing on money as a part of the puja. And we draw feet at the entrance. These feet, positioned inwards, are said to symbolize Goddess Lakshmi entering the house. Everyone at the puja was singing along to Mere Ghar Aao Lakshmi Ma, which translates to come to my house, Mother Lakshmi. This is when the habit coach in me woke up. I realized that if we don't have a clear goal or lakshya, what will Lakshmi Ma come to our home and do? Is she the bringer of If she is the bringer of goals, what goals of yours will she bring? Having been a habit coach long enough, I know most people have no clear goals. Most people have vague goals like, I want lots of money. I want to live next to the beach. I want a hot boyfriend or girlfriend. These statements are meaningless. What is a lot of money? Is $100 a lot of money? $1 million? $100 billion? You can live next to the beach in a one-bedroom apartment, in a villa, or homeless on the beach under a bridge. We often pray for things we are unclear about and then wonder why they do not become a reality. The reason is that we do not know what we truly want. And that is the key of setting our goals. You know, we all say, how many of us have prayed to Ma Lakshmi saying that, oh, I want this, I want this. But we've never thought about her as the goals that she's going to bring to us. That's why she has so many avatars. She's Griha Lakshmi, so many different forms of it. So it's important to know what your goals are and be crystal clear on them before you start taking any actions on it.
So I hope that all of us remember that Lakshmi is worshipped along with Ganesh, who's the Lord of knowledge and wisdom. So maybe all the wisdom that and all the knowledge that you've shared in your book, this is the book, and it is there in the bookshop. And after we end the session, after 20 minutes, maybe you can grab the book and
I'll add one more thing because you're talking about
Yeah.
Lord Lakshmi and so in our conversation, Devdutt Patnaik said something interesting. He said that Ashdin, understand, before Ma Lakshmi enters a place, Ma Saraswati has to enter. So always knowledge has to come first before money comes in, and that is where
my work table in my living room has Mahasaraswati.
See? Lovely.
Okay.
Neena, would you like to
So-
tell us a little bit about your book as well?
Yeah. So this is the book. This is called Grief, Growth, Grace, A Sacred Pilgrimage. I'm conscious of the fact that after a very interesting, on an everyday basis, topic like forming habits for small actions and big results, which is something that is relatable to all of us, to be talking of something complex and dense like grief and post-traumatic growth is not something perhaps you signed up for, but the organizers found a half an hour vacant and they decided to create this space for this book as well. It's complex indeed to talk about grief. It's a complex topic, but perhaps you all would agree with me that it's something that comes knocking every house. Sooner or later, grief is something that is going to come for all of us at some point. And grief is not just on account of death and bereavement based experience. Grief can happen on account of many non-death losses. In fact, grief, to put simply, is a natural and normal response to loss of any kind, death or non-death loss. And but most often when we talk of grief, we get caught in the entrapment of certain myths, like grief has to be fixed. Grief we have to learn to deal with. Grief we have to learn to manage. We have to handle. And these are things which create such a transactional burden on us that we have to learn to fix grief, manage grief, tackle grief, handle grief, that an unconscious response for most of us is to kind of run away from it. And instead of affirming it, instead of acknowledging the severity of how grief has happened to us, the enormity of the loss that has happened, instead of allowing it to sit on the trajectory of life like any other significant event, we tend to run away from it. And how do we tend to run away from it? It's not that we are denying our loss, but we tend to drown ourselves into something that takes up all of our energy and time. Like either we'll drown ourselves in work or some other diversionary tactic, like some people take up to fitness and gymming or things like that. Suddenly, like he said, from 0 to 10 kilometers, because I have to burn out all the pain that is palpable in my body, like some kind of a toxic heating up energy, right? I have to throw it out somewhere. So I'm taxing and tiring my body in the process. Or unfortunately, some people also take to substance abuse or some other kind of abuse. So these end up becoming our unconscious coping mechanisms. And how and why we should not fall for it, I don't think I need to explain about that. We all understand that work can also become addictive, and of course, substance abuse is addictive, and it has its own toxic effects. But how we can avoid all this is by affirming grief. And why affirming grief is important? Because grief has come for a functional purpose. Grief is another manifestation of love. If you have had a relationship, a loved relationship, with the deceased, with the people who have departed, or with other losses, the losses of other things with whom you had a loving attachment, then the void that gets created when the artifact or the person connected with that love has gone missing, then that void gets filled by another manifestation of love, which is called grief. Grief, for no reason, is called the cry song of love. In fact, second chapter of my book, titled this way, Grief is the Cry of Love. And some people in a simplistic way, they would like to put it this way, that grief is the price we pay for love. I would not like to put it like this, that grief is the price we pay for love, but I would like to say that grief is actually the healthy enabler which helps you keep the love alive even after your beloved one has gone. It helps you keep the love alive in your heart. The typical advice we receive in the aftermath of loss, bereavement, and grief is to, oh, divert yourself, let go. As if let go is possible without letting sink. I talk of three lets. First, let sink. If you do not let the reality sink, like he was saying, that, first acknowledge. First step is to acknowledge. Until we acknowledge it to ourselves that this loss is real and this is creating an experience of grief and pain and sorrow, which I'm unable to engage with, which I'm unable to process, which I'm unable to, even allow myself to experience, we cannot really do something about it. So first step is to let sink, acknowledge it. And then is that we integrate it virtuously on the life trajectory. Like any other significant event. You were born, then you were raised, then teenage happened, then adulthood happened, then you had a relationship, then you had a job, then perhaps marriage, then perhaps parenthood, then midlife. Like so many other significant events, death or bereavement or loss is another significant event. Of course, painful event, no doubt about that. But it's another significant event. And if you run away from your grief or if you run away from your loss, you are showing this significant away from the life trajectory, where it deserves to belong, where it deserves to be integrated. So my book's focus, it has three sections. It has three sections. Grief, first part is about loss and grief. And I have touched significantly about how loss and grief have happened during pandemic, the cremations, the funerals, the burials were so surreal. There was no dignity to how the funerals happened. The goodbyes were missing. There was no way to allow our attachment to be held in the final moments of our deceased loved ones. So how that has created a peculiar kind of complex grief. And all other so ambiguous loss, how it creates an ambiguous grief, disenfranchised loss, where certain relationships or certain losses are not even acknowledged. So stillbirth, miscarriages, these are not even seen as losses. These are seen as physiological events, biological events. But ask women who have had this. I've had 3 miscarriages, so I know what kind of loss it created for me. And then, there are relationships which are private but very important and sacred, but which have not yet gained social sanction or social approval. Now, this person is in acute grief, but this person is denied space and opportunity to allow their grief to be expressed because the relationship did not have a social existence or social approval. So I have written about disenfranchised grief also. Then eventually the second part of the book, which is post-traumatic growth, is the what I call the mind of the book. This is the longest part of the book. It has 7 chapters. And this is where I talk about how, as much as grief can be a reason for post-traumatic stress, which is what we more commonly talk of, grief is also an invitation for post-traumatic growth, a deeper growth at existential level. In fact, my premise in the book is that grief and growth are coexistential pilgrims. And pilgrimage is the metaphor I use for grief journey. And so this is a kind of pilgrimage where we do not know where we are going. There is no known path. There's not even a trail. We do not know if there's a shrine up there. We do not know who's the deity. We do not know if there will be a priest. You are the path. You are the shrine. You are the deity. And you are the priest who will lead yourself on an unbeaten, unexplored, unknown path, and you will make your path by walking on it. So, this pilgrimage invites you to take it. Take it, and then you will realize how grief has a way of transforming itself into existential growth. So, that's the second part of the book, which is in depth talks about post traumatic growth. It has a model called growth only. Growth is an acronym for 6 aspects and phases of post traumatic growth. I've developed this model over a long period of time based on my research, applied work with my clients and the communities that I volunteer for, from my professional training, and my own lived wisdom as a bereaved mother for last 10 years, 4 months and 2 days. So all of this has come together in creating this model of post-traumatic growth. And then finally is the section called grace. Now, some people like to look at it as a spiritual thing. So I like to use the word existential for that. So it's this section talks about something which, in my limited knowledge, I do not recall how many books on grief I have read, how many trainings I have attended, how many trainings I have conducted, but I haven't yet come across a book which talks on forgiveness in the context of grief. And forgiveness is extremely important in the context of grief. Why? Because sometimes grief's strongest manifestation is anger. But we do not know who to direct our anger at. We are angry with the unfairness of the loss. My son was recalled by destiny when he was 22 years and 3 months on a day which was one of perhaps the happiest day of his life. So there is this extreme unfair, and I, despite my long background as a grief expert, could not be the therapist to myself. So there's this extreme unfairness, unkindness, brutality of loss. And you are angry, but you do not know who to direct your anger at. But you need to do something about this anger. You need to find a way to process it, to heal it. Why? Because otherwise it is taking up the space in your heart and consciousness, which actually belongs to your love for your deceased loved one. So if you do not let that anger and bitterness to empty the space, which is where love needs to sit, love deserves to sit, this anger and bitterness will slowly and gradually eat you up. So I'm not saying control anger, but I would say learn to acknowledge it, process it, and heal it. So forgiveness is one chapter, which is the longest chapter in the book also, incidentally, and very dear to my heart. If you pick up the book, which is there in the bookshop, I hope that you devote due attention to this chapter, chapter number 10. Anything we want the audience to ask you or ask myself, we have 10 minutes, 12 minutes actually.
So you can ask either any of us questions. I can see lots and lots of teary eyes. I think it was a very emotional session. Thank you. Let me ask you a question to get the... Listen, guys, one important thing is that asking questions is a fantastic habit, okay? Take this down from your habit coach. So asking questions is very important. What is the role of gratitude in grief?
Thank you so much for asking. So this is chapter 11, the final chapter. The final chapter has another framework called grace, where G is for gratitude. Yes, but more than gratitude, I personally like to use the word gratefulness. Gratitude sometimes can be episodic. I remember a certain thing about my son and I feel gratitude for that. Gratefulness is a deeper existential state which stays with you even when there is no reason to feel gratitude. Even when there is reason to feel actually anger and bitterness and resentment. I have heard, I do a lot of work with bereaved parents and bereaved siblings. And this is a very common refrain I hear from people. And to be truthful, I also, for a very brief, thankfully, time, experienced it myself also. sometimes there's some kind of strange yearning, which when you look at other complete families, can momentarily show up as envy for those complete families. But basically, deep beneath what you're feeling is a strange kind of intense, gripping yearning to see your own family complete again. And in such instances, and there are more instances when there's some kind of bitterness, maybe the medical technology failed you, maybe there's been an accident, a reckless accident which has taken away the life of, or I volunteer for the people who have suffered socio-communal violence. So, they sit on a huge amount of anger. In such instances, a more gentle but perpetual existential state of gratefulness, not just episodic gratitude, of course, that's included in that, helps you actually heal your anger and bitterness also. So, to answer your short question in a long and convoluted way, gratitude and gratefulness have immense role in helping you heal.
Because I work with a lot of clients as well on who grieve or grieving, and I look at it from a habit lens, right? So one of the key things about gratitude, and gratitude is a superpower that we all have, that whenever gratitude exists in our heart, no negative emotion can sit in it along with it. So, for example, I use gratitude before coming up on stage when I'm fearful of what I'm going to be talking about the audience. I say, I'm so grateful that the audience is here, that we are going to have this beautiful moment together. So that gratitude gets over that fear in my mind. The same thing happens when there is that deep sense of sadness. Of course, when there's anger, you're in a volcano, you're in that volcano state. But when the aspect of sadness comes and you're having those memories that come back, choosing the memories with gratitude. And what I've noticed is that you can be grateful for the person, and you can also be grateful for the moments and the time. And I've noticed that the time and the moments that you've had with that person are actually far more healing than being grateful for the person itself. Because ultimately, those are the memories, and that's what this person came into your life for.
Absolutely, very well put. In fact, in loss, trauma, and grief, what happens is that sometimes we are so caught up and we are so in the grip of memories and what ifs, if onlys, that, all this turns into intrusive rumination. This rumination has an intrusive impact on you. And choosing an approach, an existential approach of gratefulness and gratitude, and in the grace, other aspects, which is R is reverence for life, A is affirmation for life, C is for compassion, and E is for essence and meaning of life. If we take this graceful approach to that, then what happens is that basically you are able to find a way to turn rumination into conscious reminiscences, and you are able to turn memories into remembrance. And you are able to take remembrance forward and let a legacy mission or a legacy project emerge out of that. Me and my family, we run a legacy mission. In fact, more than one, but one is flagship, which is my son, when he was 8 years, he started running pavement libraries all by himself on the weekends. So now we set up community libraries, static and mobile both. So gratefulness is where it all starts. Then you choose and pick moments and allow them to turn into remembrances and create legacy missions out of that.
Lovely. Lovely, okay.
My question is to ma'am. You mentioned in your session that expressing or acknowledging grief is probably the first step to deal with it. Ma'am, in our lives, when life just takes over, in the everyday, when your daily routine is just there and you have not approached or taken a step to go to a professional or to anybody, how do you advise that grief is acknowledged? What is that simplest way to acknowledge grief in your everyday? I mean, it's coming from a loss of a parent.
First of all, my healing prayers are with you. Um, and second, I would like to applaud your courage to put it out in the open. And in doing so, you are already acknowledging your pain and your loss. Um, Let me bust a couple of myths here that acknowledgement has to be externalized. No, acknowledgement, to be purely acknowledgement, is to oneself. Affirmation, when it happens within, it is sometimes not even needed outside. Affirmation and acknowledgement, they basically happen within. And expression does not have to be a loud and clear and a visible and external expression. Expression, why expression? Because otherwise it will be suppressed. So either you suppress or you allow. Expression word in common parlance has a very limited understanding, but basically in its expansive, wider meaning, it means that allowing it a voice, allowing it to be seen, allowing it to be validated. So that is to be done by yourself. You're saying that in the everyday life we get, caught up in the rigmarole of everyday life and how to create a movement. I think this is where Ashdin can be helpful. How you create time for a new habit. Because the post-loss life needs us to form new habits. The grieving brain is in fog. Why? Because there are neural pathways which are already established and programmed deep about the person who you have lost or the object you have lost or any other loss that you're grieving and mourning. Their neural pathways, neural circuitry is already solidly formed. And that neural circuitry is desperately looking for stimuli about that person or that object. We need to train our grieving brain about new habits. So how you will find out time, we can have an offline conversation about that. But his book and his work, Ashdin's work, will certainly help you find ways to create new habits. But grieving brain definitely needs to be habituated about things which you will need to do in post-loss life. What are those things? You have to create a new regime of self-care and well-being. You have to create a new space for expressing your pain, whether it is in your journal or it is through art therapy, through music therapy, through your connection with nature, in nature, through meditation, yoga, whatever works for you. You have to pick up something which is a therapeutic thing and habituate yourself to that. That's also another form of expressing grief. I don't know whether I have answered your question or not, but I'll be happy to have an offline conversation with you. Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a simple question. Probably it clubs both of you together. There is a situation probably in a life where the person has done everything, loses the person, and in spite of doing everything, still feels guilty about not doing something. And then, post the loss, there is a trauma or a conflict, or call it a grief within the person as to why we were not able to do it. Now, what the person actually feels, probably after a few years of summarization or of analyzing or reinventing himself, feels that probably in those situations you could keep calm. Because it is trauma. You are both dealing with trauma. The person who is losing his life is dealing with the trauma. The person who's going to lose the person is also dealing with the trauma. Both of them, you are going, and you actually do not know how to handle it because it's chaotic, absolutely chaotic. So in that process, my question to you would be, how do you keep calm in those situations? And to you would be, how do you deal with guilt of not being able to do something which you obviously could have done, but you realize after losing the person, this is what you should have done? Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. So one of the things that I say as a habit is that the hardest conversations are the easiest to have. The problem is we don't have hard conversations. Today, everyone's so silent listening in because we were having a hard conversation. It was something that we didn't want to address, that was addressed. It was snuck up onto y'all, but it was addressed. And it is a hard conversation which all of y'all are going to go back feeling lighter about after this. The key thing is that we try and tiptoe away from hard conversations. And I've always noticed the harder the conversation, the easier it is, because both parties actually have been wanting to say that. It's just that nobody had the guts to say it till this point. So have the hard conversations, and you're going to notice that your life becomes much easier after that. And with regards to guilt, guilt is one of the most toxic emotions that we carry ever. Guilt is one of those little things that eats us up inside. And very often, guilt is used as a manipulation tool for us growing up. So many of us are born with a disposition towards guilt. And there are steps to get over guilt. I normally talk about 3 steps to get over guilt. The first one is acknowledging that you did what you did. The second one is making sure or deciding, are you the kind of person that is going to do this or not do this? And choosing and changing your identity basis of that. And the third is, if you choose that you're never going to do this, make sure identity changes in that direction. Or if you decide that I am the kind of person that does this, and own that identity completely. I've noticed when you follow these 3 steps, the guilt that you're carrying typically goes away.
Yeah. So, ma'am, grief has multi-level effects, and on emotions, I call it entangled ball of emotions. And of all the emotions, G of guilt, I call the complex G of grief. So thank you for raising this question. This needs more time. We have already finished time. This needs more time. I will be happy to talk to you offline. But to quickly answer your question, in therapy, when people come to us for therapy, everybody, by the way, the other myth is not everybody needs therapy. Not everybody needs counseling. Not everybody needs to come to a professional. All of us are equipped by nature to help ourselves through whatever is called mental health issues and problems. Grief is not even a problem. Grief is an existential state, right? But coming back to this thing, sometimes in therapy, when it is the grief has become, guilt has become frozen and acute, we actually summon the deceased loved one into therapy. We create imaginal conversations. I encourage my clients to take up something called unsent letter. And then respond to your unsent letter as if you were the deceased loved one. And take this conversation forward until you feel now it has reached completion. Don't force close it. But you will have to have the heart and the courage to continue into it. Then bigger thing for you to do is to become self-compassionate. You have to create an everyday discipline of self-care and self-compassion, because the guilt that you're feeling is on account of real things. We cannot deny their reality. But we can certainly do something to heal the punishing effect of guilt. Allow it to become a point of realization. Allow that point of realization to actually now influence the health of your other relationships. We can talk more if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Don't forget to buy the books. We'll see you there. I'm going to be signing and sending autographs. There you go. You can buy all of these.
These are the books, and we will be there near the bookshop. Thank you.